Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello, once again, welcome to the Simulationist podcast. This is the 64th iteration. It is the 24th day of November in the 2013th year of the Common Era.
I can never remember if it's Gregorian or Julian calendar.
Gregorian.
Oh, okay.
Well, there might be another few leap seconds added with the modern age of the atom, but I think it's basically Gregorian.
Okay, well, there's not much of a difference between Gregorian and Julian. It's just whether or not you get that leap day put in every so many years. Like, one utilizes a leap year every, 4 years, and the other one says a leap year every 4 years, except when it's divisible by, 400.
Except when it's divisible by 100, but not if it's divisible by 400. Actually, I don't know.
It gets really kind of petty, and so, Common Era, whatever. Basic global calendar system.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. My name is Josh Trelevin. Across from the table from me, always...
Ryan Kirkby, co-host extraordinaire.
Yes, we are both co-hosts. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and I guess we should jump into our things that we've been doing, or the simulations that we've been running, so share them with you.
So I've been doing something a little different this week. I've been trying to guarantee a solid 8-hour rest, if not sleep period for myself, instead of just saying, well, I had a half-hour nap here, so if I get 7 hours later on, then that's almost an 8-hour night tally. Yep. So I'm trying to make sure I get the full solid bulk in there, and see how that changes me personality-wise.
Okay, yeah.
I notice I'm a little calmer as opposed to most weeks, and my dreams are much more, vividly recalled, as opposed to just brief, just ephemeral images that just vanish with my waking period.
Ah, that's cool. I like that because if, I presume that you're cutting out certain bits of entertainment or TV or video games.
I'm not doing as much coding. In fact, I don't think I got really much of any coding for Dwarf Fortress done this week, between, watching my daughter and making sure I'm a well-adjusted and rested individual.
But your brain is still doing, instead of that, your brain is doing dreams now. Or at least remembering dreams, I guess.
I think it's doing dreams better because they seem to be a little bit more cohesive than I recall. Even if they tend to merge the end of one with the beginning of another. Mm-hmm. But apparently that's not an uncommon thing for your dreams to not just have an end. They just kind of seg on into something else.
Yeah, I think that's how dreams work, basically, yeah.
That said, I would actually prefer if my brain worked a little bit more like changing channels. If there's just a brief amount of static and then something different happens, it makes it easier to understand later.
So you would rather have dreams that you can understand? You'd rather have coherent dreams?
Well, the dreams I had last night, I'm able to recall exactly where I got the seed from. Like I saw an episode of The Real Ghostbusters on television in the background of yesterday, and then I read some nice short fiction about... like a Conan-esque individual. He was an assassin in Constantinople, but he was a barbarian from what was, the Scandinavian region.
Oh, yeah. One of the Varangian, Varangian Guard. I think I'm saying that wrong, but...
No, he was actually part of the Court of Rats, as it was called at the time. He served a eunuch called the Deacon. Some real nice characterization. I could really picture the main villain, the Deacon, in the whole situation. Yeah. So there's definitely something to be said for that. But later on in my dreams that night, I had a dream where, I am Egon Spengler from Ghostbusters. And then later on it segs into me being a barbarian in a civilized land. So I can clearly see where I was getting this source of inspiration, even if it didn't seem like an inspirational start when I was undertaking it. Like, I had seen the episode of the Ghostbusters maybe a dozen times before. I was barely paying attention.
Yeah.
Still caught my brain enough to make it part of a dream.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting that in a dream, it's like, I was doing this, and I was Egon. But in movies, you don't say that. You don't say, I was the guy in the movie. You separate yourself from the movie.
That's the thing. In my dreams, I tend to shift between a third-person perspective where I'm behind the protagonist, and then I am.
Yeah, I think that's sort of how often dreams will be.
So I was kind of going back and forth there. So I have to say that I was the other person as opposed to I was watching and following from his perspective, sometimes in a first-person view.
Although in a video game, it's more easy to identify, say, I was Lara Croft, for example. Even though, obviously, you're not Lara Croft. But you sort of say, oh, now I'm going to jump over this thing. Now I'm going to go
shoot dinosaurs and run through the caverns.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna
it happens with her sometimes, yeah. So I don't know if my gaming history, like actually playing video games, has helped lead me into this perspective for dreams.
Probably not. I don't know.
But I'm able to look at it much more clearly in my mind now. I'm able to remember the last 2 out of the 3 dreams I had last night. So I'm kind of digging this I'm well rested sort of thing.
Okay, so you've been sleeping a lot.
Not sleeping a lot. I have been sleeping properly.
Oh, okay.
It's not just like napping on the couch. It's actually making sure I'm in bed at a reasonable time. And if I'm not sleeping, I'm at least relaxing, which I've been told is almost as important as actually sleeping itself. So, so that's been my big thing. That's it. I mean, I haven't been a slouch. I saw, The Evil of Frankenstein this week.
Okay. How was that?
I liked it. It was not a Universal horror film. I'm primarily watching Universal horror stuff for the classics, but this one was a Hammer horror film for those the British series that worked with a lot of interesting takes on their monsters. Like their werewolf wasn't a person that had been bit by a werewolf. It was a man cursed by abject lack of morality through. Apparently this is like morality is somehow genetic because his father was completely dehumanized and, I don't know. There's some weird things going on there.
Okay.
It's that in lieu of a full proper soul, the beasts and bestial spirits were able to come on in, and that's why he got so bestial, like a werewolf. It was a curse, and like a spiritual curse as opposed to I got bit, physical curse. So Hammer horror does things a little differently. I'm always paying attention to what they do. Okay. And I think it was a pretty darn good one. I was able to really sympathize with the... He's a protagonist, but, Victor von Frankenstein is kind of a villain in that he's kind of a crazy mad scientist, right?
Yeah.
So, on the other hand, he kept, everywhere he's been going, it's like, why does everybody keep trying to destroy my stuff? They smash my things. They force me away. I'm trying to make the world a better place. So I was able to sympathize with him. It's like, you know what? What you're doing is kind of wrong for your era. Like, this is an era where you can get legally punished for, committing crimes against what people perceive to be the domain of God.
Right, sure.
That's actually on the legal books there back then. And so, so what he was doing was wrong from clearly that perspective. But I sympathized with him. And that's nice to see in a villain. Someone who at least imagines himself to be the hero.
Right. Well, you and I sympathize, obviously, with men of science. Right.
Well, I prefer to think of myself as sympathizing with men of reason more than just science.
Yeah. Science
there have been scientists that have done some pretty stupid things. And I'm like...
I'm sure they're stupid, but...
Well, I'm just thinking there was a scene in Prometheus where there's a guy, he encounters like an alien snake thing, and he's lost, he's afraid, but what does he do? He decides to try and play with it. Oh, come on here. Oh, can I get you to do some like fancy, like snake-like tricks? Next thing you know, acid spits through his face his face mask. It's choking him and putting like an alien seed in his intestinal tract.
Yeah, but I don't blame him for that. I mean, how could he have known that was going to happen?
He's on an alien planet where they have previously seen people running from something dangerous and a lot of corpses. I would be relatively afraid of anything that moves, and probably a few things that don't, given the architecture stylings. There were some pretty grim, dark paintings going on there.
I see.
I would not have tried to do that. I'm a biologist myself, and I would know better than to get too close to an alien species that suddenly, it wasn't there when we were here before.
Well, how are you supposed to, I guess you send a grad student. That's what you do.
Well, that's the thing. It was a 2-year trip, so by that time the grad student should at least become further progressed in the whole thing. But in this case, you send an automated rover in to deal with these crazy species that you're encountering.
Yeah.
They should have at least one for that sort of thing. Possibly.
But would it spit acid at a rover, do you think? Or
probably, but at least then it's an acid-spitting, alien snake. So
and if the rover gets damaged, oh well.
Shocking.
Only $1 few million. Whereas if the scientist gets acid on him, did he die in that scene? I can't remember.
Oh, he was pretty darn dead. If he didn't die immediately, he was not long for the world. He had acid in the face and an alien snake choking his neck.
Yeah.
So, he kind of karmically deserved his death by proving his stupidity. In the tropes of the movies, he's proven himself too dumb to survive.
Did he manage to get, data out of that, though? That's what I want to know.
Not really. I mean, he learned that they spit acid and they will choke and impregnate you.
No, I mean...
He wasn't able to get that to anybody else, though.
It didn't.
He was with the cartographer, and I don't think the cartographer lived much longer after that scene.
Because I think it's... Well, I mean, in this world of science, I think it's worth risking your life if you can get data, advanced human knowledge.
I will risk my equipment for this data,
Yeah.
but if it's going to take 2 years to bring another person in, 4 years if you're going to take the ship back to go get them. Sure, you're in stasis sleep, so you really don't miss it that much, but that's still 4 years used up that you could have spent more wisely. Out of all the resources available to you on the whole ship, the bit about you being a resource means your knowledge base makes you fairly, valuable.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe not necessarily as valuable as the guy who can pilot the ship, but that's an issue for another day.
Well, yeah, what is he piloting the ship for if not for the science of it?
Well, that's the thing is he's just a biologist. You want the ship's pilot to pilot the thing. So in a crisis situation, the pilot becomes more valuable than you. Yeah. Anybody who can help get you away from the troubled situation is more valuable. Yeah. So yes, I value men and women of reason as opposed to as opposed to any actual scientific degree. So it was nice to be able to sympathize with the the mad scientist in this situation.
Yep.
But it did remind me of the last week's one, as I described in the last podcast we did. It was the House of Frankenstein, which I was not too big a fan of because of the lack of correlation. If you're going to write a fan fiction with 3, well-known characters, at least have them, interact more often, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
But in this case, I noted that, so you've got your mad scientist, you've got your Igor, who's named Hans. There's very little actual Igors taking the Igor role.
I see.
Yeah, throughout the series. And then you had, in this one, a mesmerist. He was able to get Frankenstein's mind working again. He provided a catalyst like the lightning bolt provided a physical catalyst to make the body alive again. He made the brain start up. And then there was your outcast sort of role. In this case, it was a red-headed lady who was both deaf and dumb. She had a better rapport with Frankenstein in that he was deaf he was dumb himself, so he couldn't speak. So they were very much more physical communication. She was helping him out.
The sign language and all that.
The physical stuff, it's like, you eat like this, so she puts the food up there, and so he understands as opposed to some guy screaming at him. And who knows how well his brain's working at any given point. So it does help out to show as opposed to tell.
Yep. Okay.
And so she had a nice purpose, but it made me think, because last week in the House of Frankenstein, you had, your scientist. You had your Igor. You had your in this case the outcast role was occupied by the gypsy girl, and then you had your common man, which in this case was the werewolf when he's not being a werewolf.
Yeah.
And so you had a group of people together for a common cause, and I saw that again this week, and it made me think, this is kind of like what it would be if you were to have this scenario for a gaming table situation. So, you'd have your main, like, okay, like this is going to revolve around Josh's character who's playing a mad scientist. So, if you guys could, help build your character roles there. And the other guy goes, well, every scientist needs an Igor. I'm naming mine Hans, though. I don't like Igor. So he comes up with an Igor helper sort of, thing.
Yeah.
And that guy's like, I want to play someone a little different. I want to be like a hypnotist. And yeah, I think I can do some fun with that. He's a little amoral sort of thing, but not bad. One person said, oh, okay, I'll actually play the monster if you guys get him up. I won't be here for all the sessions, so if there's anything wrong with, like, I can't show up at the table, then the monster just kind of goes catatonic or something. And that explains him away. And the person goes, oh, I'll be the outcast sort of scenario. I think I can have some fun with that role. I'll be deaf and dumb, and I'll be a redhead, which is still kind of negative connotations back in that age. People believed crazy things back then, like redheads had no soul or really weird backward stuff that I'm sure nobody believes today. Nobody believes anything about gingers not having a soul, right? I mean, that's completely, antiquated stuff, right?
I don't know anybody who believes that. I think
clearly not the internet, the bastion of science that it is.
Yeah.
And so it occurred to me, like, this could really be seen as a nice, different media style for a gaming group. And how it all works. Like, everyone winds up working together at a central location. They have arguably a common cause. Although in this case, the hypnotist is a bit of a rogue. He uses his hypnotism powers to get the Frankenstein monster to steal and hurt people for him.
Okay, yeah.
Sort of thing. So, it causes a little bit of inter-party group friction. It happens from time to time. But I found it a very interesting perspective to take as opposed to just watching it as a movie. Like, okay, why is the redhead there? She kind of followed them at this point. She's just been tagging along ever since. Now she's, earning her keep by sweeping the floors because, the Chateau de Frankenstein's been kind of let go for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So it needs a good cleaning. So you sweep up a little bit, polish the new beakerware and all that. That's it. I also noticed a bit, like about a third of the movie was a back, just a flashback to what it was like when he first, created the Frankenstein by himself. And the monster, and he has like, okay, this comes down, he's got a lever for that, and then he pushes this up, and this all moves over, and it's all automated sort of thing for him. Like, pull a crank in it, and, the monster, he doesn't have to lift the monster up. The monster's in like a braced cage. So he moves I guess at this point it's really just a corpse. It hasn't been animated for the first time. So he moves the lever, and the whole thing slides nicely. But when he discovers, like, oh, the monster isn't dead, I can revive him again, he has to work with, like, the parts that are 10 years old, rusted, and have not been maintained. So it really does have, a different sense. It's the same place, they're doing the same things, but they have to, like, haul it down, and they have to be careful, because every time they throw a switch, like, sparks come out, oh, no, we got to fix it over here. It had a nice sense of mad urgency to it that I found was really well done. Yeah. It really did have, like, the desperate science, oomph to it in the scene.
Yeah, sure.
So I think just, by forcing it to be more brute labor as opposed to, and then he pulls a switch and things start moving, it's just like more physical, hands-on science, which I think is perhaps, a nice indicator of mad science. Anybody can be working with chemicals in the lab and just, oh, now it has turned purple and smoke comes off. But no, you got to get in there with your hands. You got to lift a corpse up. You got to move it around. You got to throw levers that are sparking and potentially causing fires. You got to go out in the rain and maneuver, your antenna around so it'll, get the best degree for the lightning strike. That is mad science. That is the physical science.
I like it. Yeah.
I think and it was really well portrayed in there, even if I suppose most people didn't understand why it was this way, other than, oh, now it's old equipment, not new equipment, like it was 10 years ago. Yeah. It's rusted. It's, like dilapidated. Yeah. So yeah, just because I've been well rested doesn't mean I haven't been able to properly, intake my fiction and properly study it.
That's good.
As is my
think
style.
About it.
Yeah. So I think if I'm ever to, run a campaign whereby, you got to do some sort of science or some alchemy, I can have a nice mind frame as opposed to say, okay, you make your check and succeed. If you're in like a situation where you're in like a cabin in the woods, it will have a much more rustic feel than if you're in a laboratory in a city. So I think I learned from that as to portraying the setting around you and what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's my big thing this week. How about you? What's up with you?
My big thing this week, what have I been doing? What simulations have I been running? I got a new tablet, so I've been playing. I've been catching up on the different Angry Birds, different versions, the Star Wars version and everything.
I'm still not sure if I like the Star Wars version. I just don't like seeing the main characters kamikaze themselves so often.
Yeah, the whole thing is it's a disturbing game to begin with. So I played that a little bit. I played a bit of all these little games like that. And
well, the tablet games are the more popular spot to spring out your free games or your 99-cent games.
Yeah, for sure.
They should almost qualify as their own console style, as opposed to the Xbox or.
Yeah, you could have a whole podcast about just those little tablet games.
And they can be very fun and addictive, despite being just a basic premise.
Although, can you imagine the Tetris podcast talking week after week about Tetris?
So I think I found a new sort of pattern I can start positioning things in, so that we have minimal, blank space and maximum utility, no matter what's dropping. I've also analyzed the drop frequency rate. Here, I'll put up the charts, as a connection.
And that's one episode, okay?
Like, we want to really talk about what you can wind up doing for making fun images when you're going to lose, but you don't want to just, drop everything in a straight line.
Okay, yes, and different alternative ways to play the game, yeah.
I do know there's one way that absolutely just nauseated me, where the block that's dropping remained stationary, but the rest of the screen moved. So, like, it would be dropping down, and if you spun it, it would start going on its side. So if you spun it around, the entire screen would go around. And I tried to play it, and it just made me so... I couldn't even pass the first level because I just kept spinning back and forth, and it was just really hard to orient my brain that way.
You know what Tetris that I would like to play is if it was a circle, and like the circle was like almost like a little planet, and all the blocks fell in towards the circle, like from the outside to the inside, and like the layers would get consecutively smaller so that it would fit on the screen.
Very
so
nice.
Basically, it would be like the same version except that it wraps around.
It has a nice, better visual style for it.
So you'd be like, yeah. And you could move it all around, like orbit
spin.
the planet.
Yeah. Nice. I'll say this, though. I'm really glad I haven't actually seen a Tetris style that utilizes anything other than a finite moving style. Like, if you move it to the left one, it goes one left, not it slowly arcs to the left. Because those little spaces in between would drive me so crazy.
Little tiny space in Tetris.
It's just a tiny wedge.
1 pixel.
You can't fit the piece in down on the other side because there's just not enough room, and so it winds up sticking up there, and it's like, no!
It'd be great, though, if there's like a little saw at the side of the... Like, on your way down, you could, like, there's a little saw, and if you can catch the saw at the right point, it cuts off a little bit of the...
Like a circular saw blade. That would actually be kind of cool. But it just occurs to me because, like, once you've got it just moving slowly, like, so you have, like, the infinite space instead of just, one block over.
Yeah.
Once it lands, what if gravity takes effect? So
it just falls over.
Thump, and then all of a sudden you got something working at, like, a 45-degree angle. It's like, how do I make that work?
That sounds like a horrible nightmare.
And yet, I'm certain there's somebody planning it out there. If we haven't inspired them, there's somebody already working on such a sadistic game.
Yeah, I was mentioning Angry Birds, and the physics in that game are sort of like that. It's like, the blocks and stuff sort of fall a little bit awkwardly, and whatever. They break, like, that's
beautifully. I love them. That's why I think everyone likes the game. It's like, oh, I destroy stuff by throwing a bird at it.
So my other thing that I've been occupied with is Minecraft, of course, playing more
Shocking.
Of my Minecraft. I've been spending time in the town of Porcinia, named for the abundant pigs which are going to be there, but I haven't finished the pig farm yet. I'm right now working on a mushroom farm, deep underground, so that involves a lot of digging, and I've done like some mazy passages where it's like, okay, this passage is lined on either side with mushrooms, little cedar mushrooms.
Nice.
They're on like little, I guess, shelves, or basically the cedar mushrooms are on the shelves, and mushrooms spread, right? So they spread on the middle of the floor, and that's the ones I grab. I was thinking of doing an automated one, but I don't know. I like just harvesting stuff.
It's not that hard to harvest a lot of the stuff, and it feels good just to start thrashing through a wheat field and collecting everything. So yeah, I completely understand and relate with you on that one.
Yeah, but the one problem with mushroom farms is that they need a certain level of light. They can't be full light. But also sometimes if you don't get it quite right, you can get it right, but if you don't, then monsters will come in the dark.
Trust me, I've had a lot of experience with like, what's going on down there? And then I go downstairs to my mushroom farm, and there's 2 skeletons and a zombie sneaking around. It's like, get out of my farm, you lazy undead.
Yeah.
You're like bad as hobbits. Oof.
I think that covers what the simulations I've been running. Yeah, just building. Playing different games. I watched my shows as always. What was I thinking? Like Grey's Anatomy and Big Bang Theory and things like that.
Anything caught your notice?
No, not in particular. Not this week. I mean, I just am enjoying those shows. I also watched Castle too.
Yes, the latest series with Captain Mal.
With the Captain Mal, who's Nathan Fillion.
Yeah.
Captain Mal from the Firefly series, which came out. It was only 1 season long, but it came out a couple of years ago. It's good. I enjoyed that Castle. Not much to say about that either, unfortunately.
You haven't been studying it. You've just been accumulating a base for each of them right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because that's the advantage to a movie, is what you have is pretty much all that you have. You can compare it to others of its type, but the movie is self-contained. So if you've got yourself like an hour and a half to 2 hours to kill, well, then you can study it. You don't have to say, okay, I'm just going to watch this, see what I can learn about the characters. Maybe I'll get some deep understanding next week. It's like, no, this is it. If they're dead by the end of it, that's it for them. If not, there's still nothing else for them after the credits roll.
Oh, I did want to say one thing about Big Bang Theory. This last week about sort of the TV Tropes item of it is that this one takes place entirely at Howard Wolowitz's mother's house.
Oh.
But of course his mother never appears on screen. And
she's a hidden character.
She's one of those, that's the character that's off, that you hear the voice.
Like Norm's wife in Cheers.
Norm's wife. I guess, I don't know if the neighbor in Home Improvement counts, because...
well, he's seen, but not fully. He's always he's more of an alluded to character.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of another off-screen. I'm sure there are several examples.
Well, if you could copy from Cheers, go with its follow-up series in Frasier, and Niles' wife was always mentioned, but
Lilith?
never seen.
No,
no,
that was
it was
Frasier's wife.
Yeah, it'd be his brother's wife, the rich heiress.
Right.
Always alluded to, never actually seen. So.
Yeah. And I just wanted to, I guess, comment on that trope, and I don't see the value of it. Like, I don't know if you have a different
saves
opinion
money,
on
so
it.
you don't have to keep casting a part-time character.
Really? Like, are you that cheap that you don't want to show a character? Like,
sometimes people have been that cheap. Other times it's just
I hope not.
they don't even really need the character as like a physical person. Like in the case of Norm with his wife, all you need to know is he's a married man. He, sometimes gets a decent amount of flack from his wife, so he, makes sure he has some quality time with his friends at the bar as opposed to it. Yeah. Why is he at the bar tonight? He's got a fun little story to tell that'll seg into some other topic, and that'll carry on through until the main plot comes in for the day. He's a backup joke sort of thing, and he comes equipped with a wife you don't really actually need. Yeah. She's just there to, cause the situation to naturally arise.
Well, I wanted... with regard to the Big Bang Theory, then moving on to that, like, I don't really understand the justification of having an entire episode set in the lady's house, and there's never a scene, like, she's bedridden or something like that. She got sick, or she's supposed to be morbidly obese, which is, fat jokes and all that. So I don't know how. I don't always find the fat jokes that funny. I mean, I guess sometimes I chuckle at them, but
if they're done right, it's good,
It's often they're really just lousy jokes. So I don't
honestly,
know.
most of the time, I have to say the best fat jokes I've ever heard were from the Jay and Silent Bob series. The stuff that Jay calls, Silent Bob.
Yeah.
A lunchbox, tons of fun. It's an affectation more than a joke, really.
Yeah, and it's written by a fat guy. Well, apologies to Kevin Smith for calling him fat, but
his body mass index indicates he's not amongst the lean members of society.
That's probably
that's strictly how it is. He wears it well, I gotta say though. I mean, it's not like he's like a round ball.
Yeah, he covers it up well, so good for. But no, they do, the whole episode is set in this lady's house, but she never makes an appearance. And I guess, that's sort of, I don't know, that's sort of clever, or...
maybe at that point it's just continuing on with a running gag. Like before, it's like, a quick scene at his place. You never see it. You don't see his mom there. It's just someone shouting. They happen to have it happen again. It becomes a running gag. How far can we take this? The entire episode's there. You still never see her.
Yeah, but let me ask you this. Would you make a similar decision if you had a TV show? Do you think you'd be like, oh yeah, we'll just have a character that nobody ever sees, just you hear her voice and... would you do something like that, or do you think that's necessary? Or?
I don't think it's necessary. I'm thinking like if it's a friend situation, if they keep mentioning like the landlord or landlady or whatever they have there, who they pay the rent to, or they talk to the problems like, the heating's not working right, or we need this fixed, the door jams, it sticks. In which case, that's just a way to set up a situation. You don't need the character. In this case, it seems to be just seeing how far they can go with their running joke before they eventually find a celebrity to appear as the mom.
That's true. And I suppose in some ways they've sort of, once you start down that road, you sort of paint yourself into a corner, because the audience will want, like when you finally do reveal, it has to be big. Like you have to make a big deal out of finally revealing this character who we've never seen, because for some reason entertainment works that way. I don't know why.
Well, it's the first appearance of a notable character in the series. Everyone should want to see this.
Yeah, and then it's gonna, like, is she gonna be like? How do you even pull that off? Like, is she gonna be a big, huge lady? And what actress is gonna be?
But here's the thing: is you could make it much more acceptable by not having an actress play at all. You could have a larger actor playing up in drag.
A male actor, I guess, because female actors are also called actors.
Yeah.
Depending on what they like to be called.
Yeah,
but
proper
also,
context.
Yeah, but a male actor could...
And you could just do the in drag, like, oh my god, your mom is so ugly, she looks like a dude in a dress.
It might be the same actor as Howard. That would be kind of actually funny.
Yeah, Howard in a fat suit, you'd do the whole Eddie Murphy style routine on there. I think that would actually be a very interesting way to go. And as a bonus for, again, cost effectiveness, you don't have to pay for another actor just for the makeup time. So, there you go. Or what you could wind up doing is having like a very well-known attractive actress, skinny, and have her in the fake fat suit, and just say, whoa, it's like, it's played by this beautiful woman, but she's supposed to be like the Walwitz's overweight, ugly mother. And so then people can like maybe feel a little bit better about making the fat jokes. It's like, no, it's really someone skinny in an outfit instead. There's some complications for morality as to what is acceptable for jokes on that sort of thing, but you could split it a lot of ways depending how you want to do it.
Yeah, and I think I just find it interesting, and I don't want to pass judgment on it, but our society seems to be more okay with that, the fake, like, it's really a beautiful person faking being ugly, than the much easier thing to do, which would be just to get a regular overweight person, which they probably have.
Hollywood's not just all beautiful people. There are regular people there too. I'm sure they've got ugly people somewhere in Hollywood too.
I'm sure they must exist. It might be a rumor, but there must be ugly people
Lord
somewhere.
knows there's very little video evidence for that sometimes, and you're looking at what comes out of there. But I'm sure they have people of average quality of looks and appearance. Yeah.
Although I don't know if they ever mention whether she's... she has facial hair, and
she's got... I remember from some jokes she's got some bad varicose veins and all that.
But other than that, I don't know how unattractive she would be. I think she has warts, I'm sure, that they've mentioned those.
So there's a few jokes about her physical appearance sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, well, here's the thing: is if I was going to be, like writing for like a hit TV series, like apparently, the Big Bang Theory is,
yeah.
I would not want to rely on old jokes. I would want to make sure I'm doing something fresher and newer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be more inclined to step away from the old invisible character, make a lot of appearance jokes about them, work it into something else.
Yeah.
Heck, if anything, just at least flip it on its end. Wolowitz's mother is apparently a completely attractive lady in her what should be 40s, 50s sort of thing.
Well, if Howard Wolowitz, he's been to space, so I'd say he's at least 35.
Yeah, so she could be considered to be a very attractive lady for somewhere in the 60s age category.
Yeah, sure.
And then you just never have her appear. You just have people making a comment like, "Oof, it's 30 years older." You would be very uncomfortable with the relationship I'd be trying to get with your mother. At least that way you're doing something a little different on a theme.
I mean, yeah. Well, that would be interesting. That would be something different. Yeah.
Because if you want to become the big hit thing, you can't follow the pack. You can't rely on the old jokes. There are some standards, there are some classics to always work with, but you gotta tread new ground if you want to be remembered as someone who was breaking new ground.
Well, I wonder though. I mean, we're talking about mainstream hit television, so I don't know how worried they're about legacy. That rather than just can we get this show going for another season and keep our numbers up, and because they care a lot about exactly
how much of a share your ratings got this week,
and what every little detail, all of those things have to have an effect on the audience the very next week. Be like does this bring audience to this?
Well, that's the thing.
show?
Is if you're doing something that people didn't expect, it's new. They're saying, "Whoa," it's like I don't recall seeing a TV series like this as opposed to, "Oh, it's one of these. I've kind of seen it. It's about a few married couples that are making jokes about like the quality of the relationship that they're in." It's a standard sort of like, "Oh, my wife is such a nag," or my husband is such a an unknowing brute. It's like, I mean, because the one thing I got to say for the whole series, Everybody Loves Raymond, was that the mother and father characters was it's like, well, why are you even together? You seem to hate each other so much, and you nag and you counter nag and you just aggravate each other.
Like everybody's parents.
Up to an nth degree, yes. And so it gets to the point where it's like, I've seen this kind of role before. Why are you together? And if they can explain at least why they're together, well, so be it.
Well, there's moments in that show when every once in a while they have their heart rending moment where they're like, I guess maybe I don't mind you, or he's like, the dad is like, well, maybe you're not the worst person I could have married, or something like, and that's like, oh, so your heart melts because he showed a little humanity.
Sounds kind of like Stockholm syndrome and abuse, relationships to me, but that's just me. Where that's the thing is the series was great, but I found it really hard to relate to them as anything other than a two-dimensional caricature of a character.
Yeah. I don't know if, I mean, when, I was trying to talk about ratings, but in reality, I don't care that much about ratings and stuff. I want a story that looks good to me, and so something that's interesting to you and me isn't necessarily going to bring in all the ratings because people aren't I don't think everybody is looking for that smart, unique, different take. They just want the same old, something they can laugh at.
In which case, they have several channels on basic cable that focus on reruns.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know why why television keeps making new stuff.
Well, they got to try topping at least, the old stuff. That said, they don't seem to be trying for more unique stuff because, I mean, there's nothing coming on that's like The Twilight Zone. A nice short series, independently done ensemble cast that happens to feature well-known actors. They're only in it for the one episode sort of thing. No one's really trying that anymore. Although, really, it's kind of hard to top The Twilight Zone when you want that.
Didn't they try and reboot The Twilight Zone at one point?
They did, but it just wasn't the same. They didn't have the capture the feel for it.
They didn't succeed. All right, yeah.
Well, they succeeded for 2 seasons, so that means they succeeded enough on the first to get the second season on the air. But it didn't have the same heart.
Okay, yeah.
So, say what you want about it. I liked some of the new stuff myself, but it's really kind of hard to top something that's considered a classic of television.
Yeah, well, of course. And it's also like you're not just contending with the actual content, you're contending with people's fond memories of it, which often get inflated and improved with,
well,
you know.
So that's the thing, is it's also the story behind what's going on. Like for the Twilight Zone, it wasn't always necessarily about the weirdness going on in the situation. It was about how the people reacted to it a lot of times.
No, I think it's always, yeah.
Yeah, it's a much more of a character thing as opposed to, from what I saw in the new ones, it was more about the plot. Like, what happens in this situation, and then they kind of have people that carry it through, and it's not about the people, it's about the situation.
You weren't as interested in the characters. Yeah, that's...
If they died because, the nano machines rewrote it so that their hearts stopped beating, I guess that's just how the story's going. I don't have as much a care for it. Meanwhile, if that was done, in the classic style, you'd really feel for the characters. Like, no, he has to survive. There's a reason for it. He has a motive. He's got a personality to him. Yeah,
well, that might simply be a matter of good and bad, or just skilled and less skilled.
It was about knowing what's about, because, I think most of the classics are always about what it's like for the people in that situation. That's why the zombie movies were apparently popular initially. It wasn't really about the zombies. You need to get a bunch of different personalities in a tight, confined, high-stress environment and just watch as they ignite and, have chemical reactions with one another. Oh, it's like tossing magnesium into water.
I've heard that thought before, and it just sparked a thing in my brain. Like, what if could you do a zombie movie and have the main character, the human characters, do all the same things to each other and like act, do all the things, but it turns out that it doesn't turn out. It's just you don't use zombies, but instead it's just something that happens, like an earthquake or I don't know.
Apparently there's a nuclear bomb on the way. Everybody to the fallout shelters, and then you get a bunch of people who would ordinarily just ignore each other in the streets altogether in a bunker, confined.
Yeah,
the door's on lockdown until, either it gets proven false or the radiation level dissipates in 50 years.
It's like, do you need the zombies to have the exact same interactions with, like, if you use the same human characters, could you get...
You could put them in almost any situation, as long as they're confined there, it becomes a character study.
I guess it's difficult to have a real threat that's as universal and as, like, world global, I guess, as zombies, like...
Well, that's the thing, is back in the 50s, early 60s, they did have the, it's a nuclear war, everyone has to get in, go to the basement sort of thing. Yeah. Heck, I remember one episode where, for the Twilight Zone, where one guy had a fallout shelter in his basement, no one else did, and so they were trying to break down the door sort of thing. Yeah. And it's just like a character study in a peaceful, wonderful neighborhood under a high-stress environment. We need to be in. There's only enough food for so many people. And if I can't open the door anymore, otherwise we'll all die anyways. And so it was much more of a character study, because, I guess, spoiler alert, it's 50 years old now, but spoiler, there was no nuclear thing going on. Turns out it was just a dud, going on there. So there was never any real threat, and yet they were still ready to tear each other's throats out and kill one another to get to safety. What does that say about truly civilized society? Submitted for your approval.
Take the civilization away, and then that's why we call it civilization, because...
Well, you remove the structure base, the normalcy from it, and then everybody starts going crazy.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how they thought things would happen. I like to believe that people would remain at least somewhat logically calm.
Or how about this, for a conspiracy theory, what if, like, zombie movies and stuff are really just a big conspiracy to make us all sort of believe that we need civilization to survive?
When really civilization needs the mass amounts of people working together, believing it, in order to maintain itself.
Although, I think I'd rather live in civilization. I'm just saying.
I gotta say, I do like the more urbanized situation as opposed to my rural upbringing.
I like being civilized.
That said, I kind of miss the woods, just like walking by somewhere in the, at night on a nice summer's night, and there's the trees off to the side, and you hear the small night animals doing their thing.
And that's why we have stories, like the zombie stories are good too, because you can at least live sort of vicariously and imagine what that world would be like to have true freedom and not be restrained by laws.
And that's one of the reasons I think that some of those reality TV series are popular, like the Mountain Men series. Mm-hmm. It's not that that you really want to hear what's going on for these men living out in the wild. You just want to be in a situation, watch for an hour a setting where you're out in a rural area. Maybe that's why Man Tracker is being as popular as it has been. Although Hunting Man is a very nice theme for it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons why that's exciting.
There's some nice things they can go with on there. But maybe it's people don't even know it, but that's what they want. They just want to go into a situation where it's like, and now I'm in the wilderness. Okay, there's a situation with coyotes going on somewhere out there, but you know what? It's in the wilderness. And all these beautiful panoramas. Maybe that's all that they really want.
Yeah, well, and an idealized version of wilderness, because obviously the wilderness will kill you, and you'll get diarrhea.
The wilderness will kill you. It won't even care that it's killed you. The only thing that will care that it's killed you is the scavengers.
Yeah.
That's nature.
And for scavengers, that's their lucky day. That's like, there is a
God. That's the thing about nature is everyone's like, oh, look at this cute little duck, I want to pet it, and all the next thing you know, a swan attacks you, your arm is broken.
A swan can break a person's arm?
Oh, yes. Swans are notoriously strong for their size, and if you get them angered, very aggressive. Like, oh, it's a beautiful-looking bird, it can't possibly be harmful, right? No. Swan will hurt you. Swan will not care. Once the swan's done, it'll fly away. And then it'll leave you with your broken arm and traumatized mind.
And the swan won't even eat you because it's not a scavenger.
Which is not to say that a lot of species aren't herbivorous only by circumstance. I recall a situation where I was watching from some of my science stuff. They had a mist net that would see how many insects were going through a certain area throughout a period of time. A very good scientific study to see how healthy a biome is. Like, if there's no insects, things break down pretty rapidly. So they put up a nice little mist net, and oh no, a little bird's got caught in the mist net. Well, that's okay. Come the hour, they're going to get the bird out, right? No, a deer comes by, looks at the bird, eats it, and walks away. Leaves a hole in the mist net because it ate a bit of that too. But the deer, a supposed pure herbivore, said, you know what? There's some extra protein I can have right there. I'm going to have me a nibble. Munch, munch, munch. There goes the bird. I'm walking off calm like Bambi.
I think the deer was thinking halfway through, what is going through the deer's mind? That looks tasty. I'm going to taste it. Oh, it does taste good. I'm going to keep going. Oh, so good. I'm just going to keep on chewing.
I love the crunch the bones have. This must be what those humans have for potato chips. It must be the bone of some creature. It crunches so wonderfully.
And then, yeah, that was...
And then it just walks off, and it's like, did I just see that right? A deer ate a bird?
Now, did it crunch it up, bones and all? Wouldn't that, mess with its digestion or something?
Well, they got 4 stomachs sort of thing to let it break down, because they are ruminants. Okay. So something tough like bone would get very more spongy as opposed to our stomachs.
Okay.
That's why you can't feed bones to dogs or cats, especially bird bones. Whereas creatures that have 4 stomachs and are able to regurgitate stuff up, like birds, like owls, will bone, that's nothing. I'll just it comes later as a pellet.
They make those owl pellets.
Yeah, and there are some species of birds that will actually chew some of it up. They're like, oh, this feather's kind of worn out and it's not helping me. I'll nibble it down, and they'll have that act as like a mesh net, and then later they'll just up it comes.
Pork it up.
Yeah, pork it up, and there it is. And all the stuff that they couldn't digest or would have hurt them later on is just caught up in their bad feathers that they ate.
Oh,
out it goes.
Okay.
Very interestingly resourceful thing for nature to do that way.
Cool. Nature's cool.
Nature's cool and cruel all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. But I suppose we should get going on the main topic for today.
Well, I just wanted, before we get into that, I wanted to try interrupting in the middle for letting you know that we have an email address, thesimulationist@gmail.com, and a Facebook page, facebook.com/thesimulationist, and a YouTube channel. The YouTube just has the same thing that you're listening to now on it. It's just in video form, just in case you like to consume your podcasts on YouTube. I'm not sure. Anyways.
We're not going to say you can or can't do it any specific way.
Anywhere that, we're also on iTunes. You probably, statistically, you probably already downloaded us on iTunes if you're listening to this now. But anywhere that there's a little box that you can type in, and feedback is always good, ideas, things that we brought up that we didn't quite finish, or little things that you missed, or another perspective on
If you think
stuff.
I completely botched, like The House of Frankenstein, it was a classic that I completely naysayed, and I'm bad on that. Or, my fundamental design for, these guys work as like a 4-party team in like a gaming situation. If you can prove me wrong, I like to hear it.
Okay, yeah, so write in all those comment sections in the boxes and sign up to things. And Twitter, I'm Twitter SpaceBoot1, that's SpaceBoot numeral 1, at SpaceBoot1 on Twitter, and yeah, so...
I'm still out of Twitter right now. Although, now that's become a publicly traded thing, maybe I want to get in on that. Maybe I want to become one of the members of that. Help change the course.
Now, do you have a Twitter account?
I do not have a Twitter account.
You've been in there and read it.
I've been there and I've read things.
Yeah.
I like seeing some of the trending topics. Like last year, I liked the Ottawapiscat. Instead of the Attawapiscat, somebody thought like, oh, what if we were to treat Ottawa like a First Nations society group? And so they had Ottawapiscat as their hashtag. And that had some very nice satire, and I'm always a fan of satire, so I was following that trending topic while it was there.
Twitter's full of like people making funny jokes,
witty things.
Yes, it is quite funny sometimes on Twitter, and it's biting commentary and all that.
And sometimes just people having complete breakdowns.
And
like Donald Trump, I mean, sure, he's rich, he's successful, but when he goes crazy on Twitter, and it's beautiful for crazy.
Yeah, but I haven't gone crazy yet on Twitter. Anyway.
So keep following Josh on there. As soon as he has a breakdown, you will be able to see it. You'll be able to get in on the crazy ground floor. Although, knock on wood, that never actually happens. Kind of need you here. Otherwise, it's just 90 minutes of me talking to myself, and there's crazy.
No, you wouldn't be. You'd be talking to all the listeners, of course.
Well, yeah, but unless it's like a Rick Mercer rant, it's just
90-minute rant.
Yeah. I'd have to, like make my fist, and turn it into like the talking person with your moving thumb, and then I have to do squeaky weird voices. I don't know how good my fake voices are. I don't know if I can keep that up for 90 minutes cohesively. And as we've talked about before, if I put on an accent on it, eventually it'll wind up becoming a Scottish accent. So you guys would just write on in and say, hey, that was not bad, but why do you end up Scottish in the end? So, we need you. You balance me, dude. You balance me.
Oh, okay. Anyways, and our listeners, of course, can write in. And Godicon, I want to...
Oh, yes.
Tickets are on sale, happening in February 2014 at the Victoria... What is Victoria
Convention Conference
Center?
Hall.
Anyways, so be there in Victoria. Come to Victoria.
Be there and be square.
Be there, be square, be gaming, be simulated. Come and meet us. We'll be wandering around aimlessly, hoping that...
Try and find us. We're kind of like Waldo that way. We'll make a game out of it. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Okay, so that's that. That's stuff, I think.
Yes, shortly before we started the podcast, we were having dinner and we were watching, the Ice Age series. And I asked Josh, hey Josh, in any of the 4 movies, do you recall them ever actually having like a spring season?
Well, I don't remember, so I don't know. The one we were watching, they go underground. There's like a lost world where it's sort of tropical.
I'm willing to grant that as a way. I mean, they did that with Tarzan. They did that with some of the old classic sci-fi stuff. So you can really see that as an homage to the more fantastic, tropes.
Yeah.
But up on the top of the ground, it's like always like a winter wonderland situation.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's always sort of almost winter or sort of,
whereas in real life, if it's not like a glacier coming over top, there actually was seasonal variances. You would have a spring, summer, fall, even if they were much shorter compared to what they are considered now.
Well, I think there are variations in the movie Ice Age. I think there are some actual blizzards and times when it isn't a blizzard, so there's that.
I know in the first movie they mentioned that the winter was coming, so it'd be even worse than it normally is.
Yeah, but it's sort of always cold.
But even their summer appears to be fairly wintry.
Yeah.
So there was no like, oh hey, now we have like 4 weeks of grasses growing. Eat what we can to grow big and fat for the lean months that come in the winter that lasts, the other 10 months of a year.
Yeah. So they would have to be, well, would they be like way far north or? I mean, the Ice Age. It's weird. It's hard to even get your head around what the Ice Age was because the whole planet was cooler in that era. But also, I mean, there were areas of the planet.
The tropics were still fairly tropical.
Yeah, they're still warm, and there would have been areas in the world where it didn't snow.
In fact, because of the drop in the water levels, there'd be more tropic than there currently is.
Oh yeah, so. Yeah, there's more land to walk around on.
The Philippines might not have been 7,000 islands, but they would have been more bigger and maybe connected sort of situation. You'd have more tropical landmass there, even if it's not a heck of a lot. So
I wonder if that. You know the Hobbit human? Do you remember that?
Ah, yes. There's some actual debate right now as to whether or not it qualifies as a midget species, or if that was just a child of a normal heighted species.
Okay.
They're still out. The Homo florensis and the Homo hobbitus sort of thing.
Yeah.
They might be the one species, and we just don't have enough data to say definitively. Yes, this was just a kid of the species.
But those species they existed even before the Ice Age we think of when we think of Ice Age, right?
That's the thing. It hasn't been just one Ice Age. We've had several during the length of humanity.
Okay, yeah. True.
Some of us allowed us to get out of Africa, for our descendants' migration because the lower water level meant better green pasture along this strip, and then later on, melted away, and now it's gone, and now we're isolated. We can't go back that way. We have to keep exploring eastward or northward. We can't go back west. So apparently, that's how the current theory is for human migration.
Okay, well, sorry, that was...
But yes, that's
we
a nice
digressed, we migrated, and then we'll migrate back Ice Age.
It's basically winter all the time.
Yeah.
And it occurs to me, they have 4 movies out for the Ice Age series, and maybe they're working on a 5th, I'm not certain. I'm not, in behind the industry, I don't know what they're going on right now.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
But at least 4 movies where it's winter wonderland all the time.
Yeah.
No one seems to have said, oh, yeah, one biome, land. Oh, yeah, that's really
creative. No one
creative.
complains about that. A movie called Ice Age only has Ice Age.
Well, here's the thing, is back before the second trilogy of Star Wars came out, people were ragging on, the Star Wars universe for having a planet with a single biome.
Well,
like,
certain
desert planet
were,
Tatooine. Sure. It's a desert everywhere. There's no variation in its, style.
Yeah.
And I guess that one had a bit more of an okay explanation. The rest of the planet was inhospitable to humanity, completely scorching hot desert. Only at the poles was it allowable for humanity to survive. So, yeah, Jabba ruled over the entire planet, but there wasn't a lot of habitable planet to rule over.
Yeah. Well, and Tatooine, it was always supposed to be a large, it was a backwater, but it was also, it had a city. Mos Eisley was supposed to be...
If you can call that a city, I suppose. Well, it's just a wretched hive of scum and villainy.
No, but the thing is, when you watch the original series, it feels sort of, small and stuff. But when they redid it and they went back there, they tried to make it a lot bigger. Remember the stadium is huge, and
it still just doesn't look as big as what you might see, in the imperial cities, the more settled lands.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Heck, even maybe some of the more settled, asteroid belts. Mm-hmm. It still doesn't look big in comparison, but for them, it's a pretty big and important location.
Yeah, and for us, from Earth. Our big cities are 10 million. That's huge. 10 million is a giant city.
Whereas if you have I believe the term is ecumenopolis, where the entire planet is one massive city.
In the trillions or
getting close to it, I believe, in some of them there. Yeah. There's a lot of transient population there, and they never include droids. So,
what do you think the population of Tatooine is? Just to further tangentize, but
I don't think it would be over 1 million people.
You think it's less than 1 million?
Less than 1 million.
I think 50 million.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we'll have to do a link up to the Wikipedia on this whole thing and see who winds up being closest.
Okay.
But it occurs to me if it's just the polar areas and it's still very, very arid, I'm not imagining too high for population numbers.
Because I think Mos Eisley would have to be over 1 million.
I don't know, because I'm still thinking back to the original image, and my ice sleeve looks like maybe 15,000 people tops.
Okay.
Maybe it's more now that they've added a few CGI taller buildings in the background, but that's my opinion of it. Is it didn't look like a hugely, like a real big city sort of thing.
But you got to remember, like the country of Pakistan is 100 million people, or is it? Oh, I might be wrong, but anyways, it's a lot of people. That's a very small country on Earth. So if you were to spread that out, or like move Pakistan to the North Pole.
Well, I know Japan's not a big nation, but they got a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And yet they still have a nice amount of areas where you see the nice green hills and the nice little small town sort of styles. While they last,
so.
Times change. But yeah, they do still have wilderness there, such as it is.
Yeah. So Tatooine being a desert planet, I don't know, are we okay with that? I mean, Mars is sort of like a desert planet, I guess.
Mind you, I'm not sure if not having much of an atmosphere qualifies as the same thing as actually having like a biome type. But then you have ice planet Hoth, and some people saying, oh, that's kind of ridiculous. The entire planet being ice. It wouldn't be like that. There'd be some more variations there. When, for all I know, the only really hospitable spot on Hoth was around the equator. That's as warm as it gets. You don't want to go to the poles. That'll freeze a wampus fur off.
Well, I'll say, actually, I think the ice planet and the desert planet don't bother me that much, although the desert planet should have oases and, like, a few areas of vegetation.
Well, the poles
are. But what people complain about is the bad examples are the jungle planet or the forest planet and the swamp planet. Like that's
Dagobah being swamp everywhere.
Like an entire planet of swamp. That's very difficult to believe. Like
on the other hand, you do have a lot of situations whereby having plant mass does significantly change what you would expect to have on a planet. Like Earth is warmer than would be expected based on its location because the plants are able to cause a lot of things.
Because the greenhouse gases?
Help cause the greenhouse gases that warm up the planet more than you would expect for our just basic location. So, tropical planet, well, somewhat weird. I suppose if you had enough variation in its orbital axes so that you had much more wild climate changes, you might be able to buy a tropical planet with very nasty monsoon seasons.
But let me, like, for Dagobah, for example, like a swamp
An entire
planet,
swamp planet's a little weird.
Wouldn't there have to be, like, in order to just have a swamp, doesn't there have to be seas, like oceans, in order to bring, what do you call it, moisture up and, like, distribute it over the planet? And when
let's work it this way from that. There's that saying, if the entire Earth were leveled out, you get rid of all this, we'd all be living 100 meters under the water line.
Yeah.
So maybe Dagobah is a tectonically dead or dying planet, so it doesn't have the mountain situation going on, so it doesn't have anything, and then it could be a lower water equivalency than what Earth would have, and so it has much more of a swampy morass where it's just above the water line, and that's how it naturally settles.
Could be, although
or it could be in the process of like the planet is technically dying, and that because there's no mountain ranges coming up to keep it, it is slowly all sinking into what will eventually become a very shallow water world.
It could be,
which could be pretty boss when you think about it. I mean, there's some nice options you could do there.
They say about the Earth, though, too, is that the oceans and the water has a lot to do with the tectonic activity. Like the water helps. I don't know if the word is lubricate, if that's correct. But basically, the water is a factor in keeping plate tectonics going. At the rate that they are. Yeah, basically. And also, that's where water comes from. Like,
I know
water
is frozen, the ice land mass, they had back during the Ice Age, caused, and that's why there's Florida. Now that there's no Ice Age going on there, the Great Lakes are diminishing in size naturally, and Florida's slowly sinking back down because, there's not so much weight on the other end of the continental plate mass.
Yeah, that's right. So the water just moves around the surface and doesn't, I don't think you can have a uniformly distributed sort of like swamp everywhere, sort of just,
Well, I'm willing to grant swamp more of a style for it because with the swamp plants that you see on Earth, there's a lot of runner systems going by where technically you can have one plant that is a mile in diameter.
Oh, yeah.
And
okay.
so
Sure.
with an alien species, maybe it does technically occupy so much and is actually helps distribute the water away from this one area, and then you get your evapocondensation or water system going on that way. That would really help make it much more of a wetter planet than you would expect.
Okay.
That said,
Yeah,
again,
I like
it
that
is a little.
life has that influence. Yeah.
It is a little bit more ridiculous. If there's no land at the poles, however, you could really cut down on the potential for having a situation where you'd have ice mass there.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
maybe it's not really much of a swamp up there. Maybe the worst you get is like a mushy taiga sort of situation. But they call it just a cold swamp setting there.
Swamp.
And nobody ever really goes up there because why do you want to be in the cold swamp when you can at least be in a warm swamp situation? You're choosing where to land, right?
You're
not
know.
crashing into the planet.
I think Yoda may have guided Luke's spaceship to land where it landed, or crash where it crashed.
Otherwise, the prospect of finding one 3-foot tall green man on an entirely green planet is pretty slim. If the Force didn't have a hand in it, Yoda kind of pulled the ship in the right direction.
Something like that.
It might explain why it was such a rough landing for him too, comparatively too, because Yoda at that point didn't seem like he was all there. He was kind of letting his brain go swampy too. So maybe he wasn't as gentle with the Force as he was known for in the second trilogy.
I often wondered if Yoda didn't fake that to to escape, sort of oh yeah, it's crazy old Yoda, whatever. And
what's the thing? He was the only guy on the planet, really. I don't think there was much sign for intelligent life elsewhere.
Before, and that just sort of drove him crazy.
The isolation probably drove him a little batty talking to himself. Yeah. Because I got to say, in the second trilogy, he really seems much more all together. He's ready to flip out and lightsaber duel. Original trilogy, he seems just kind of addled a little bit. He seemed really happy to have Luke, and maybe he was being so harsh on him to make sure he doesn't leave. No. Leave, you cannot. Stay here and chat with me, you must. Getting a little stir crazy I am. So, maybe. That would require somebody with a better depth of psychological evaluation and willing to lend that to an alien species. Then again, maybe he's just playing a fake crazy hermit. Maybe that's how Yoda gets his kicks in his last years. I'll have him think I'm crazy. I'll just go, just do stupid things. I'll smack him on the back every once in a while. I'm crazy, Yoda. Woohoo!
Can we get back to the point
to the biome situation?
Biome?
So, but yeah, under the first 3 movies, the people were ragging on Lucas for having the single biome planets.
Yeah.
As opposed to the 4 movies for the Ice Age, when people were saying, where's the spring? Because, the animals need to eat, and if the plants aren't growing things, you are going to really run out of your herbivores, and then you're going to run out of your carnivores because they're eating the herbivores, and everything starts diminishing.
Well, I think that's the idea of the Ice Age, is the animals that can't migrate to the south just sort of die or whatever.
Well, that's the thing is, the mammoths worked very well in that climate. They were able to dig deep under the snow and get to the grass that had grown.
Yeah.
But if the grass doesn't grow, you don't have your food source. Nothing much survives aside from your phytoplanktons and your lichens growing on rocks.
Well, I sort of thought I don't associate the mammoths, although I think maybe a lot of people do associate mammoths specifically with Ice Age. Because weren't they a species long before the Ice Age, and when the Ice Age, wasn't that basically what killed them? Or I guess it was humans that killed them. But
well, that's the thing. Humans and a changing environment. They're woolly, so they don't do as good when things warm up.
So it was the warming that got rid of them.
The fact that they were not as well habituated to their climate as they used to be. That said, they were around fairly recently. Like when the pyramids were being built, technically you could have shaved a few mammoths and had them haul the rocks.
Yeah.
They were alive around then. They weren't doing great for numbers, but apparently they were still an extant species when the pyramids were going up. Which is sometimes a little hard to think of. It's like it's so easy to put history in its own little boxes as to what was going on and not think of it as a whole world situation. C'est la vie. It's just a fundamental flaw of how we teach history these days.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, well, we think about cavemen hunting mammoths and that being a long time ago.
And that was happening the same time. It's like, well, it's the flooding season. You farmers really don't have anything to work with. All your stuff is underwater. Come help us out with the giant pyramids. They're awesome. You'll love it. Carve something on some sandstone. Take it home to your family. It'll be great to show them. You'll be doing bunny ears behind your friend here. Great stuff.
But it does make for good stories, and like it's very evocative to say it's always winter, or winter is coming, like the Game of Thrones. Winter is 7 years long this year. It's going to be horrible. It's very...
And see, that's one of the hard things I have about the Game of Thrones is it's just knowing that winter is going to be 7 years long. You need X amount of resources to make things work. A 90-day winter, which is about right for the full season. 9 times 4 is, close enough that you get about a decent year with your transition stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
So a 90-day winter means you have to have X amount of resources for your herbivores, 1/10 of the carnivores there. If you're going to have a wolf needs to eat every so many days to make sure it doesn't starve. So that means you're going to have so many herbivores. They need to have so much to eat. A 7-year winter is going to severely depopulate the entire native biome unless there's something else going on.
Yeah, well, unless you got to figure out some crop that you can grow. Well, I mean, there's southern areas which might be able to still grow something in the winter. But definitely, you can't support a multi-region empire.
Not without a lot of granaries, and that's just the humans. I mean, if you have anybody relying on, we'll say, elk and wolves, in this case, a 7-year winter is going to completely wipe out the elk in a region and likely wipe out the wolves unless they start eating people.
On Earth it would. I'd imagine if it was an alien planet that had millions of years of evolution to adapt, there would be species who'd be like, a 7-year winter, hibernation, 7-year hibernation.
Or carnivore lethargy, as it so happens. But even then, it does require a certain amount of nutrients per unit time, so they'd have to be like they have to really get super freaking fat to do this. Or it might even work out to a more eusocial style where it's like, okay, we're not going to, all bulk up for the winter. This is the healthiest pair we have for like the alien wolf pack. Yeah. So they will feed. We will feed them until they physically cannot move.
Maybe even cannibalize.
And then at the end of it, when things get too cold, they will cannibalize, the lower ranking ones. And so that it's just those two. And then when the winter ends, they survive, they produce the next litter, and then, once that litter's old enough, they die as per the natural style, and then the next generation goes until the next winter comes in.
Yeah, and that's...
Which I would love to see. I mean, something like that would be a great setting, just to have, because it could really illustrate in a, like a gaming campaign, this is a harsh climate. How harsh is it? The wolves get so fat, they're basically spheres, and only one mating pair per pack survives. The rest get eaten by them. It's harsh, man. You don't even want to know what happens to the bison. The bison basically spore, man. They just grow up. They're technically a moss. They're nuts.
I like it. Yeah.
Well, they have kind of like a mossy type fur. In this case, the bison are we'll put them with orange. Sometimes you get that nice orange lichen growing on rocks. So they're like an orange mossy bison in your alien winter super biome.
One thing though I wonder too about Game of Thrones, and I'm not familiar. I've read some of the books and watched some of the shows, but when they refer to 7-year winter, I think it might just be that they don't have as nice summers. It's sort of like
like the
7 years of fairly cold summers.
They have that called the summer that wasn't historically because the volcano comes. In that case, that's much more better. So as long as something can grow, you can maintain at least a meager herbivorous population. Maybe the carnivores have to move out, sort of situation, or you have very few of them. But as long as there's something to get the basic trophic level, then everything else works up at least somehow, a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know what the mechanics of that universe is, if whether they just have snow for 7 years, or if it's same cycles, like your standard cycles. It's just now we're going to be relatively cooler for these years. So I don't know.
But yes, I can understand with the colder stuff being ridiculous. Like if it's winter all the time, why do you have these creatures moving around? These are vertebrates. These are fairly high-order creatures.
Mm-hmm.
Like where do they come from? Where are they getting their food?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of resources. Is it like, are you like some sort of weird polar bear, but instead of having the light go down, the strands of the fur, so that it actually warms you up more, you've got, some sort of symbiosis with like a plant, and the plant, is providing you with nutrients? Is that how you're surviving, Mr. Alien Polar Bear?
Well, I mean, Game of Thrones has magic, and so there's like undead and stuff that I guess they don't need food to.
So in which case, that's the situation. As long as they don't freeze solid, undead have a very good advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
That is the downside to undead. They're not warm-blooded.
Yeah.
So
Although I often wonder with undead whether, because undead are so often will crave living flesh, I do wonder if that's sort of somehow related to it. It's that the cannibalism thing, like maybe that's an excuse for, maybe that's how people survive, is that they become cannibals and some of them become like White Walkers, so dehumanized almost, and then they eat the humans that are still alive in order to maintain themselves through to the
Well,
next.
it might be more of a spiritual thing. They eat the flesh, they consume the soul, and maybe they need the soul to survive. They got to eat souls.
Might be some magic in there too, yeah.
That said, I know in the Return of the Living Dead series, the reason why zombies want brains is because it's the only time they don't feel pain. As you might imagine, having a malfunctioning nervous system is really painful. It's like agonizing, and the only time they don't feel that is when they have consumed brains. And so I guess that makes them a little bit more sympathetic than your average zombie. And that they're doing it because they're in such great pain, they need it to just avoid their eternal suffering.
I get the point. Well, I
don't know how well they filled that up in the sequels and all that, but I remember in the first one, that is definitely how they had it, because they were able to get to a skeletonized top half of one and put her down for an interrogation. It was supposed to be a her, but technically when it's dead, is it an it?
I'd say a body's probably an it. It's okay. I guess it's a gray area.
They were able to get some interrogation going as to why do you want our brains? It's like being dead hurts. You can feel your nerves rotting. And apparently it's not a good feeling. It's not a funny tickle sensation. It's agonizingly painful, and for some reason they know eating brains alleviates this.
Okay, well, just sort of hand wave. But
it's a good enough explanation for me on that. Yeah. So at least that's why those zombies eat brains, and that's why we have the zombies that say brains is like a trope. It's thanks to that series of movies.
It occurs to me that, like, when the White Walkers come with the winter, that almost makes sense. That's like, oh yeah, winter, here's your winter zombies that come along with it. It seems like it would be scarier if the zombies came and winter didn't come. Like if we're not having winter, but for some reason we're doing zombies, even though normally zombies come with winter. Doesn't that sound scarier to you?
Well, that's the thing, is it would be like having a migratory species arriving out of sequence.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, the Canadian geese are coming north and it's still winter. What's going on there? What's the situation? Well, shouldn't we be warming up if they're coming north?
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's the thing, is zombies are a very in-your-face sort of species. Like the Canadian geese, as long as you don't have them crap on your car, it should be okay. You don't really pay much attention to them, right?
Yeah.
Zombies, you pay attention when they come into town.
Yeah. I guess zombies aren't really cyclical, although that would be an interesting universe in where, like, zombies are sort of always, for millennia, zombies have lived sort of in the north, and sort of every winter you have to sort of fight them off, or some winters they're worse and some winters they're not so bad.
Or you could work it the other ways. You have like plague zombies from the south, the germ-ridden, and then they fester with disease. And every summer, when it's like a really nasty summer, they will migrate, northwards because they can. And then you could have the zombies in this case be a parallel for encroaching disease vectors with a changing climate. So long as it gets too hot, you run the risk of having these horrible fetid zombies come after you.
Yeah, or even zombies in the north and zombies in the south, and the humans are in, like, Europe.
Or, well, pseudo-Europe in this case, I suppose, in which case they have to worry, like, from both sides. I can dig that. I could really go for something like that. Although, For difference's sake, I would have a preference for from the north. They're like living skeletons, and they come down to raid to steal your bones, the bones of the loved ones who have died, and the bones of the living. They like the green bones. They're so nice and supple. Is that way you get active malevolence from the north, and then you just get the incidental, basic biology malevolence from the south.
Ah, cool.
I can see that working as a thing, and then you have some other situations causing problems. Throw in a dragon or two, bam, fantasy setting.
Yeah.
The dragons come whenever the heck they feel like it. They're dragons. You can say, no, you can't come. It's not fall yet. Although I do remember a series of books called Grail Quest, wherein they explained away that dragons make huge appearances in the fall because they swallow like all the fallen leaves, that they have like a natural composting in themselves, that they utilize this as creating the methane they use for their fire breath. They have like crystal caps on the top of their teeth and some like leaden bits on the bottom, so they cause a spark as they breathe the methane out. And that's how dragons breathe fire.
Yeah,
at least I think it was from that series. Any which way explains it. I'm okay with any explanation. Just say they don't produce waste. It comes out as a horrible, noxious gas that just happens to be really flammable. And yeah, they can generate that. So you don't have to worry about dragon poop, and congratulations, you also have fire breath. Whatever. Good enough for me.
I don't know, because I kind of wish that they had dragon poop for those spell components,
Well, I could see that definitely heightening a fireball spell. Just a little bit of bad guano causes a fireball. You want maximized, you got to go straight to the source. Red dragon, man. Red dragon scat. On the other hand, that sets up for some weird situations whereby, because a lot of flying species will relieve themselves when they start flying. Let off the weight means they don't have to carry it. And that's why you have to worry about like parking next to a field with birds in it. Yeah. They'll fly off the one way. As soon as they start flying, out it comes all over your car. And the last thing I want is to have the PCs suddenly be under attack from dragon bombardment in that regards. Although maybe if they've been kind of a jerky, like anti-hero, like, let's steal from the honest shopkeep, I might do that for karma.
Yeah, just...
Although it would have to be pretty valuable. Like, this would really impact, this guy's, livelihood. So, yeah, okay. And then in karmic recompense, dragon poop. All over you. It does not wash off. No, your cantrips do not clean yourself up. The smell's still there. And it's red dragon, so it's...
Would it smell like sulfury? Or?
What's the thing is, I'd go with, like, spicy. It's just like... Red dragon seems like a caliente pepper. Yeah. So it's just like, it burns in the eyes, too, and that makes it even worse. Just for fun. I wouldn't put any stats with it, just like a spicy, disgusting smell. White dragon poop would smell like lye. You get your lutefisk sort of, your Norwegian dishes in there. So, yeah, that's what they smell like.
Yeah.
Whatever. Just have some fun with it. It's not stat-based, whatever you so decide on your campaign. But that's what happens when you start putting too much realism in there.
So I'm trying to think of another, eternal, I don't know.
Well, they do have some areas that, bask in eternal darkness. Like, the sun never shines on an area.
Yeah, the land of darkness.
Yeah, in which case, you really have to have a lot of low-light species. Like, I could see mushrooms growing very well there. They don't do well in direct sunlight. More fern-based species, the things that don't do well in direct sunlight, would flourish there. And you could, if you were willing to look into your botany well enough, you could have some very great descriptions of the natural extensions. Maybe the mushrooms become like giant trees there. The ferns grow huge and just wonderful. They become like the conifer trees, just really big land, wide areas occupied by them.
Well, if the sun never shines on a land, are we talking an entire planet?
I'm thinking in this case, I was just working with some sort of valley where the sun never shines. Okay. But I suppose you could work it with Lagrange points where there's an artificial satellite preventing it from having proper sunlight shine on a planet.
Locked with the sun or something like that.
Well, then you run the risk of there being just no heat in general, and so you.
Oh yeah.
Then you run then I guess that would actually really explain a desert planet and an Arctic planet. Well, it's in proper synchronous orbit, so it's only the one way all the time. And in which case, I don't think anybody would argue on that one. That's like, ooh, and they got the green strip right around the center. Yeah, man, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that would be nice. Maybe ultimately the whole single biome planet's just quick short writing. Like, it doesn't really matter. Sure, maybe there are forests elsewhere. It's not just a marsh planet. Maybe it's just a really green planet, but the marsh is what's important. So this is where we're going. Marsh planet. Don't care.
Yeah. Well, although, like, in some ways, if it's not a marsh planet, if there's like, there's Dagobah happens to have a perfectly nice habitable forested field, like sort of.
It's redwood,
perfect.
It's Xeno redwood areas are just magnificent.
Like the other side of the planet was perfect. Like there was a huge runway all ready to go for Luke to land on.
Well, here's the thing, though. Maybe it depends on the person.
I guess because Yoda was hiding out, so he didn't
want
to be in that.
You want to be out in the boonies sort of area, and maybe Yoda's species is native to the swamp. Maybe that's where they prefer to be.
Yeah, I believe that.
I mean, I can definitely understand, the Wookiees not wanting to be there, because you got that much fur, you're in a mossy area, you're going to start growing stuff, you're going to have to maintain, a lot of fur care to make sure you don't get, infected with parasitic moss species alone. It happens, man. It happens. You'd have to, come up with something like that would effectively mat it down, like some sort of grease to put on yourself.
Wookiee grease.
You get some sort of greased up Wookiees running around in your swampland area. It would make sense from a perspective there, but I can understand why nobody wanted to see that. Although I kind of want to see it now. Wookiee greaser. I'll Google that up, see if anyone's come up with a concept.
Well, I'm sure in the extended universe, Wookiees have occasionally gone to a place like Naboo, which has a lot of water to swim in and stuff. So.
Yeah, but they either show them as looking kind of like a wet dog, or they've got that wonderful luxurious, I blow-dried my hair. Thank goodness for future space blow-dryers to make it look all great. There's nothing like, I'm kind of swampy and fetid. Like, I've seen some decent creatures in some old editions of Dungeons & Dragons, where it was like a furry creature in a swampy setting, and they looked really ragged and like, oh god, that's skeezy.
Yeah, that's good though.
And so it works on that way. But here's the thing: is if you work the planet instead of okay, we need a spot where he's going to a swamp, so it'll be a swamp planet. That's all we need to care about for this planet. If you work it the other way, it's like, what is life like on a planet that operates a binary star system where there's two suns? And then it's like, okay, the one sun can be one color, the other sun can be the other, so depending on what sun is up in the sky, we have different colors going on. Bam! You have the setting for that Pitch Black movie.
Yeah.
And in which case, the setting of the planet helps determine what's going on there. So you can work it from, instead of a top-down from a bottom-up perspective.
Oh, yeah, sure. That makes me think, though, Tatooine probably shouldn't be a desert planet, or it should be cold if it has twin suns, because any planet that orbits a binary system would have to be extremely far away.
Unless they had a situation whereby one of the stars should be a much smaller star. Apparently if Jupiter was much larger, it could have condensed and become a protostar, generating some heat and light itself.
Yeah, but then wouldn't Jupiter throw the Earth off or something like that?
In which case, if it was, provided everybody's orbits were stable to begin with, it doesn't matter whether it's a big gaseous planet or a condensed solid planet, it still has the same gravitational effects.
Oh, I see, as long as it's the same mass. Sure, why not? Yeah.
So in which case, provided, let's say, the first, planetary orbit for the Tatooine star system was itself a secondary lesser star, and that's what you happen to see, is they look the same size, but really one is much smaller than the other. It's just closer to you.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I'm no, astros, climatologist or anything, so I don't know. All I know is it needs to be a desert planet, so it's a little closer in that Goldilocks zone, just barely on the front edge of it, so it's almost too hot to survive for humanity.
Yeah. And of course, there's the whole, symbolic implication. In human culture, the sun is a pretty awesome figure.
So why not have two suns? Double awesome.
So yeah, double the sun would be double the heat. That makes sense from, mythologically.
Well, I remember reading up on one homemade fan campaign setting where it was kind of like the Dark Sun in that campaign setting. There was a lot of desert and waste area, in which case their sun was considered holy, but not in any positive effect. It was a very demonically evil thing. It's what causes the pain and suffering. And it was the night, and it was the moon that was the wonderful healing goodness. In which case, it reversed from the whole, vampires are part of the darkness, and so they control the creatures of the night, the bats and the wolves and the rats. And in this case, the setting was that the bats and the wolves and the rats were considered holy, sacred creatures because they come out during the good time of a day, the night part of the cycle. Whereas the diurnal species that you see out in the day, they were considered the evil, heartless, just nasty ones, like the vultures and that sort of thing, things that relied on just ambient heat for gliding. Those birds were very evil in the same mythology. And so I like the work that went into that.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
It had the mark of somebody who thought it through. Maybe they were just really upset at what Palor was like in the generic Greyhawk setting, and they wanted to reverse things. How does it follow through? They kept thinking. And I think that's ultimately what shows through in the end, because you can tell from George Lucas's stuff that, okay, all we need is like a swampy setting here, so it's a swamp planet, whatever. It's not key to the story. And so from that you see that, you have these one biome planets. Why? Because you really didn't need to tell any other story anywhere else. You're only on the one part of the planet, and that's all you need.
Yeah, as long as the planet, sort of the most interesting feature on the planet is
the people you're going to see.
Yeah, the people, and sort of it's not like this is a regular, this is Earth, but we happen to go to the desert area. Because why not go to the Earth area, sort of? So
why not go to the nice, gladed woodlands part of the planet?
Yeah, so you need at least to say, well, the interesting thing on this planet that we're going to visit is, this planet might have other features, but the interesting thing is this desert, maybe it's the only part of the desert that's habitable or something like that. Or, you don't even have to explain it, I guess. You
know what I would have liked to have seen, though, for a style in the whole Star Wars universe? Is actually have at least a partially constructed Dyson shell.
Oh, yeah.
Because, if you're going to have a planet full of people, that's limited space based on the surface area of the planet.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were to build, and let's face it, most people say Dyson sphere and imagine it to be a solid shield like around it.
Yeah.
And that's not the way he intended for it to be. He wasn't actually all that serious on it for a concept. He was just throwing out ideas that he'd heard from other people and said, what if we did it like this way? And for Dyson Freeman, what he wanted was actually a series of like plates that would wind up eventually blocking the whole thing. But if one fails, you can just replace it. You don't have to dig out a chunk of the shell and put that in.
And they're all orbiting independently, basically.
Yeah, they're all in the same orbital area, but they're occupying a thing. I would have loved to see maybe not just even the shell, maybe just like a Dyson asteroid belt sort of style. It was originally an asteroid belt, but they didn't like the rocky design, so they made it flat, and then they built up on that. And next thing you know, it's occupying the whole area around. It's a ring around the star.
Yeah.
That would have been great to see. Would have been great for a cybernetic area. They had them at various areas. Like you want the core processing. We go up front, and that's where we do the smelting, and we get the energy for all the high end processing. Back here, it's much more habitable. This is where we, relax and do the stuff. And the cold storage is in a third ring further behind. I think that would be just a kick, and people would remember that star system.
Yeah.
But they haven't done it. There's always, fingers crossed, there's always something going on for episodes 7, 8, or 9.
Well, I'm sure they'll have wonderful. I hope they have wonderful new ideas about new environments. That's the one thing about Star Wars that's always excited me, even with the prequels. It's like, what new planet.
The backdrops looked amazing. Like, they had that one lava planet. It's all magma, huge activity.
Yeah.
That's where you do your ore refining. Why? Because you really don't have to heat it up. You just dip it down, and then you take the slag off the top. You're done. Take it to another planet to go elsewhere.
So we've been talking for about 90 minutes, so I think we should maybe final thoughts
on... by and large, a single-biome planet is not as inherently unreasonable as some people say. An ice planet Hoth is fully legitimate.
Okay.
We
didn't talk about raining methane. That's too bad.
Oh, yes.
Guess another day.
You could go even further out of your habitable zone, and then you could have it like rain methane, and you could have they can only go out in the wonderful, whole bodysuit protection. I think it's a great way to go about it too. But I think if you're willing to accept that you can have faster than light travel, you should be willing to accept that maybe you have alien species interactions that help regulate a full, planet's biome. Maybe just a little bit.
Sounds good.
Especially if you want to work it with some sort of, civilization going in there. Maybe they don't like it being that cold. Maybe it was like once an ice planet, but they put up enough solar reflectors. It's effectively like having 7 suns shining down. Used to be ice planet. Now it's tropical where we want it, and that's magnificent. I'd remember that planet, man.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem that unrealistic. You don't really need that high of a tech. I mean, you see in the Star Trek series, like, oh, this is the vacation planet. How does it stay tropical all the way around? They have a planetary grid that helps regulate their weather patterns. Too much energy here, move a storm up there, warms up the cold spot, everything works out great. The entire planet's a tropical paradise now. That seems like that's really futuristic. But you know what?
Yeah.
Solar reflector panels, you could kind of do that now if you could get an entire, planet's ass in gear.
Yeah, it only costs a couple trillion. I mean, that money sort of exists. You just have to...
Well, that's the thing is, technically it doesn't even need to cost. The government can wind up appropriating it.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah.
In which case, it's skimming off the top. It's just getting, you can consider it waste off. It's like, okay, the economy's doing really good here, so we're going to impose like a 5% tariff. 5% of all the products you produce have to go towards the solar reflection program. And that's what we're going to do to cool down your economy, make sure it doesn't overheat. You guys aren't doing too good over here. You're just barely able to keep your economy, stagnant. So we're not going to impose any tariffs just to make sure you're not getting too penalized.
Well, I mean, that's an idealistic view of government. But yeah, sure, I suppose in theory that's a way that it's possible to do it, yeah.
And that way, the government says, okay, in this way it's not costing us so much. Now all we have to do is get the fuel to get us up there.
Well, I mean,
and everybody
benefits.
benefits.
I mean, the government can just... I mean, what they do now, they pay for... they give NASA a budget, say, here, NASA, here's your budget, you do what you do.
By the way, they don't give NASA enough of a budget. NASA comes up with amazing things and great sites and absolutely just a fraction of what they could be doing for wonderful scientific progression and awesome space stuff.
But yeah, I imagine they could do the same sort of model with an organization, like a government organization for climate management via... mirror satellites. I mean, it sounds really futuristic, but yeah, it's...
The technology really isn't that, highly advanced. It's just getting everybody to agree to do this.
Well, yeah, just at least one world government.
Well, here's the thing.
It might not be America. It might be China.
Here's the thing that shows how backwater Tatooine is, though. It's a horribly hot place. Why? There's so much solar radiation coming in from their 2 suns. Why aren't they putting up solar reflection panels to block out, say, 20% of the sunlight? Cools it down. All of a sudden, oh my goodness, wonderful biomes blooming up here. There's grass growing. It's raining properly. Why aren't they shipping in some water? It doesn't cost a lot to go to a water planet, dunk a giant tanker ship, and then haul it over.
Yeah. Well, and we haven't dipped into ethics. I suppose
planetary terraforming and
that'll
stuff.
That'll be another episode, I think, with ruining one biome in favor of another.
Well, that's the thing is if there's not any intelligent species on this whole thing, you could wind up causing more land mass to appear in a mostly water planet by draining off some of that water and moving it to a desert planet. There just doesn't seem to be the galactic impetus to get up such a program, when they could have many wonderful planets if they were to work together for a greater good.
Well, and yeah, this is why the Galactic Republic declined and was ultimately overthrown by the Emperor, is because it was, in a lot of ways, it was not functioning ideally. And of course, the Empire didn't improve things, but what the Empire did was it saw that the Republic was weak, and it took advantage and... Yeah.
And okay, here I'm willing to say this is a Star Wars universe we were talking about here. They really haven't done much for technological innovations in a long time either. Their holograms still have that freaking line running down. They can't get the resolution right. They can't alter it. I was able to do that in a TV that we had 30 years ago. Oh, the horizontals on the fritz. Just adjust the knob down at the bottom till it goes away. They don't have that technology.
Actually, no. Okay, here's what it is. Is George Lucas went back in time, because it happens in the past.
No.
He went and he brought Earth cameras to
Also, it's just a frequency problem, like when you're like showing something on TV of a TV and they're not at the proper refresh rates.
Because he had to use 20th century technology to record, well, whatever.
Well, there's still some other things I can utilize, for example, to show that they're not technologically innovative at this point in their galactic civilization. So maybe, it's saying that they could have shipped water and they could have reduced the solar radiation to make the planet more habitable, but they aren't. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh on that.
Well,
totally saying they could have, though. They totally could have.
We can take up this terraforming or something like it in another episode. This one has gone on.
Changing the world sort of thing. Yeah, we'll mark that, earmark that for a future topic.
Okay. Thanks for listening. I've been Josh Trelevin.
I've been Ryan Kirkby.
Send money.